Hello and welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben. So I've been knee-deep in 40K lore lately. I mean, I'm having nightmares about being stuck on Tigris during the Orc Wah! In the 35th millennium. I even wrote that dream down because I'm trying to decipher it, figure out why in my dreams I'm a lowly guardsman when everyone knows I'd be a space marine. Anyway, today I want to explore what life is like for women in the 40K universe. After all, most of the people we see in 40K are men, as they dominate the military and the day-to-day grind of fending off or dying to the Xeno hordes. So I find this question interesting because in all of the lore that I read, I so rarely come across women, or I suppose I should say female characters. And this question is also of interest because today we live in a world that is slowly ascending out of thousands of years of systemic subjugation of females and women. So if women's rights are advancing in the present day, then what will they entail in the 41st or 42nd millennium? I'd expect people to assume that there would be ubiquitous equality tens of thousands of years into the future, but I'm not quite sure that is what we see. First, let's start with the armed forces. We just don't see that many females in the ranks. Obviously, the Space Marines are entirely composed of men, though there have been some myths I've heard that tell of women serving in the Adeptus Astartes. Though if true, this would be the rare exception over the great course of time. Of course, there is the Adepta Sororitas, which is an entirely female outfit. The Sisters of Battle, as they're known, are elite warriors who make up the armed forces of the Ecclesiarchy, or the state church of the Imperium. The sisters are raised from youth to serve the Emperor, just as the Space Marines are. Praise His Holiness. However, it's noteworthy that the Imperium keeps their division exclusively female. Now, I don't think this says to us that the Imperium's leaders necessarily feel that the Sisters of Battle can't handle the tasks that male soldiers can. Quite the contrary, actually. The sisters are regarded as some of the Imperium's finest warriors. However, I do think this tells us that the Imperium sees males and females as distinct from one another and as having different capabilities. In general, I don't really think that the Imperium takes any time to think about fairness or justice or equality. I don't think that they care if females in the Imperium are suffering. In general, the Imperium sees people as tools to be used, and its leaders don't care about individual rights and don't share a modern Western conception of morality. And that goes for how the Imperium treats both males and females. Whatever needs to be done to anyone in order to advance the interests of the Imperium at large, the Imperium will do. And so billions of people, many of them men, are thrown into the fray to face down the Xeno hordes, and a large portion of such people perish in doing so, whether willingly or not. Now, females may less commonly be seen in military roles than men are, but they do still serve in positions across the armed forces, and that includes positions that require them to engage in combat. Sergeant Tona Creed was one of the more famous females to serve in the Imperial Guard. Raised on the hive world of Vergast in the Sabbat world sector sometime in the mid to late 41st millennium, Creed was recruited into Tanith First and Only, an Imperial Guard regiment more famously known as Gaunt's Ghosts. And her recruitment and service led to many more women joining the previously all-male Ghosts as well. What's implied here is that there's still some sex-based discrimination against female soldiers serving in the Guard if the Ghosts weren't recruiting females prior to Creed's enlistment. Clearly, there exists females who can fulfill a guardsman's duties as well as a male can. Now, by saying this, I know I'm going to invite a lot of vitriol towards me in the comments below, but I actually don't think that it's that implausible that there are plenty of females in the 40K universe who can meet the physical demands of Guard service. Even in the present day, there are females who are stronger and faster than males. Yes, males are much stronger and faster on average, but that's just an average. There are plenty of exceptions. Note, I said exceptions, not the majority, not the vast majority, exceptions. And in a future Milky Way galaxy with trillions of people, there are going to be plenty of females capable of Guard duty. But it's interesting that the Imperial Guard is still stuck in a similar debate to the one we are in today regarding females in the military. Perhaps the long periods of stagnation and regression at points that the Empire of Man has experienced in terms of technology may have permeated other facets of society as well, such as governmental structure and the political sphere. As far as the Imperial Government itself goes, this body is also dominated by males, once again implying systemic discrimination throughout the Imperium. The High Lords of Terra, the de facto and somewhat de jure rulers of the Imperium, are almost always male. Males decide almost all law and policy for the entire Imperium. The leader of the Adepta Sororitas, the Abbess Sanctorum, has here and there been elected to join the High Lords, though during many periods of history she was completely subservient to the ecclesiarch, or the head of the state church. So just like in any patriarchal society, there is the rare female who breaks through and attains some measure of significant power. But overall, this does not change the fact that females are victims of systemic discrimination in said society. I think the fact of the matter is that the Imperium is committed to war and the perpetuation of mankind at large. As I said, the Imperium's leaders don't value the life of the individual as much as they do the life of collective humanity. And thus these leaders have built a society that is heavily geared towards fighting a war against terrifyingly powerful Xenos and not necessarily towards representation and freedom. In this kind of society, corrupt megalomaniacal leaders often rise to power, and such leaders don't often see to it that human rights are observed. And why is it that males are the ones to dominate in these situations? Well, theories abound, but physical strength may have something to do with the constant subjugation of females throughout history up until at least the 42nd millennium. Okay, so then what about civilian life? Because after all, while the Imperial military is massive, most people in the 40K universe are still civilians. Well, this is where it gets a little bit tricky to answer the question we posed at the beginning of this video. But you already clicked. Gotcha! As we explained in recent videos we've done on 40K, the Imperium of Man takes the form of a semi-feudal system under which all Imperial planets act as tributaries to the central government. However, the Imperium actually has a pretty light touch when it comes to managing the affairs of its constituent planets. I'm sure the High Lords of Terra would love to keep an eye on every single Imperial world, and the Inquisition does what they can, but ultimately there are just too many planets, we're talking millions here, to micromanage all of them or even many of them competently. Thus, as long as Imperial planets fulfill the Imperial Tithe, which requires each of them to provide manpower and other resources to the Imperium, then the Imperium leaves them be. As in, the leaders on each planet can run their society however they want to. This means that in order to determine for certain what life is like for women across the Imperium, we would need to study every single world, or at least most of them in its domain. Some Imperial worlds were probably highly democratic and acutely observant of human rights, and others were probably tyrannical and oppressive. And those are not the only combinations of governance. There are limitless possibilities, really. Still, given that worlds were largely left to govern themselves, this does say to me that checks and balances were lacking across the Imperium, implying as well that Imperial planets were often rife with corruption and other abuses of power. Yes, I suppose in the present day we on Terra have no external power checking us, but if we did, maybe we'd be less corrupt. Maybe women's rights and their quality of life would have advanced way faster than they have up to this point in time. Also, since ultimate unchecked power resides with the Imperium's central governing body, I have to believe that the governments of the Imperium's constituent worlds echo the central government's autocratic structure. And to me, this often means that civilians get the short end of the stick, and females an even shorter end. I'd presume that life for females throughout the Imperium is often riddled with abuses of the worst kind, and that won't change unless the Imperium of Man makes a concerted effort to lift the status of females or changes their governmental structure entirely. But the truth, His Holiness save my soul, is that the Imperium is ruled over by a small handful of conniving, ambitious males who want more than anything to retain their power and circumstance. Thus, they are unlikely to do anything or make any changes that could disrupt the status quo. Anyway, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below. All commentary welcome. Bring it on. Remember to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a damn thing. For now, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films, peace.